Hi everyone, this is Lena. Welcome back to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. Today I'm using the newly released Dance in the Rain stamp set and the Trafalgar Square Meraki Para-Dies, and I don't know if I am pronouncing this correctly, but I'm trying. I'm going to do some watercoloring today, so I use Aquarel paper. This is from Schleiper. It's a store that we have here in Belgium, but it's a really basic paper, so it's not expensive at all. It's sort of a wide brand, if you can call it like that. It's the paper from the store itself. Okay, just so you know, this is not any crazy quality watercolor paper. Now for the images, I wanted to keep them really soft, so I decided that I was going to do some sort of embossed resist watercoloring. So I'm stamping 2 of these flowers stamps and then 1 of the amazing Peacock stamps using Versamark clear embossing ink, and then I'm using this Ranger embossing powder. This one is the clear. I still have that white paper, so I just decided to use clear. You can also use white embossing powder or whatever color you want, but for today I'm using the clear. And then I decided to take my distress inks. Now for today's card I'm using peacock feathers mostly, and then I will also use picked raspberry and carved pumpkin. Now before coloring in those images, I am going to create this whimsical background. I have trimmed this panel to a slimline sized panel, and then I'm just scribbling on that ink and making sure that I'm moving it along. I want some spots to be a bit darker, some to be a bit lighter, but I want that complete Trafalgar Square Meraki Para-Dies to be covered on the back. It can come from underneath it a bit, but mostly I want this color to be centered in my slimline panel. Now having done that, I thought that I wanted my frame that I have here also blue. Now I colored it really simple by just adding the leftover blue ink that I had, and if needed I added some more, but in the end I will not use this one. In the end I thought that it was just covering too much. My peacock was disappearing into the blue of this frame, so I switched to a white one. But I just wanted to show you it's really easy to get the same color of your background onto your frame if you want to. So this frame would have been perfect if I wouldn't have colored my peacock this way, I think, but just sometimes plans need to change. I splattered some of the peacock feathers as well on top of my slimline panel, and then the frame also a bit. And then I continued with the images. Now for the images, having done this whimsical background, I decided that I wanted these images to be the same kind of watercoloring effect. So I actually started with the blues again, because that was going to be one of the colors that led into the pinks, and then together it would be purple. So that was the idea. I added the blues, watered it down, and then I tried to get a nice transition towards the pink. So first I'm adding just pink, and then I'm mixing and matching it with the blues. And I also wanted to go outside the lines. If you want to, you can really keep it inside the lines. That would also have been pretty, I think. But I wanted that whimsical effect, and if you're using the matching dies, which I think is really handy for these kinds of stamps because they are really detailed, I didn't want to have the white outline. I don't know why, because actually I think it's the first time that I colored like this and going specifically outside the lines because I wanted it to, but I liked it, and I had so much fun coloring this way with some distress inks or watercolors. Whatever you have at home can do the trick, of course, but I just did the same for the flower here as well. I wanted the flower itself to be really pink, and then some gradients, so some that was more diluted pink than other spaces on top of this image. And then the leaves, I wanted it to be blue, purple, pink, all at the same time. And I did sort of the same, well, it's watercoloring, so it's never exactly the same, but the same idea I used for the other flowers as well. And then I just returned to the peacock to add the beak and the feet, the paws, I don't know in English. In Dutch we have different names for feet of humans and the feet of critters or animals. But well, just we call it the feet for now, and you can always leave it in the comments. I will read them if you know what I'm talking about and if there is a specific word for it, because paws are more for dogs and cats. I don't know. Okay, so here I just sort of finished the flowers, adding a bit more purple where I want to. You can really vary in between really soft and darker, and I really like that about the idea of watercoloring. And then I took the carved pumpkin to just add a bit of orange, well, to these parts. And once that's dry, I'm going to take the matching dies and cut these 3 items out, and then we can continue with the sentiments. So at this stage I was really contemplating white, blue, white, blue. Well, it wasn't easy, but I ended up with the white one. Once I decided to go with the white one, I had to decide going vertical or horizontal with this card. I must admit, when I'm making slimline cards, I tend to go for vertical ones, but a horizontal could work as well, especially with this design. It could also go horizontal just. But for today, doing vertical, I'm trying to get this aligned straight using my T-square ruler, and then I'm using these purple tapes that I added to keep it in place. I'm going to stamp out my sentiment, but I want it to be inside of one of these squares, so I needed some help keeping this frame in place so that I knew where I could stamp it out. Now, because my images don't have that black outline, I decided upon heat embossing once more, but because I have this blue already on my background, I use some white embossing powder. Again, from Ranger. This one is also super fine detail, which is really handy with the script of this sentiment. It's adorable. I love it when several scripts are combined for one sentiment. So here I masked off one part, stamped it out. I'm going to heat emboss it already so that I can see where I already have a part of the sentiment, and then I'm going to stamp out the second part. Now I'm going to remove the excess just using a dry paintbrush, and then I will heat set this part of the sentiment and do exactly the same for the other part. Also, I'm avoiding to add the embossing powder close to the purple tape because of course there it's sticky and you never know, but I don't want to heat emboss next to the purple tape, and I'm just melting it. Now I know that it's not that visible. Well, I think the recipient would be able to see the sentiment, but after heat embossing the second part of the sentiment I will add a bit more blue to get it more visible. So that's also a lovely thing about watercoloring. You can add more ink if you want to and make it stronger, the color that you already have. Prepping again to avoid as much excess embossing powder as possible. Stamping it out. Doing that twice. I'm not really someone that is heat embossing all the time, but when I do, I prefer stamping it out at least twice to make sure that it's stamped out completely. And definitely when you're using watercolor paper, it often has more texture, which makes it a bit harder to have it completely stamp out your sentiment or your image. Removing the excess and then I will also heat set this part. And I'm really glad with the quality of my stamping on this sentiment, also because it's a tiny script, the first part of the sentiment. And then I decided to add a bit more blue. As you can see, the embossing will resist new ink that you're adding, and if not, or if you have some drops of your ink on your embossing, you can always remove it. There are several tips and tricks out there. What I often do, but I didn't have to do it today, is to take a baby wipe and wrap it around your tweezers or a needle or anything really small, and go with the tip that you created on top of your embossing powder. But there are many ways to remove the excess ink that you might have on there. So that's more clear. And now I'm going to add all the parts on this frame that we have. I love this slimline die. I think it's so handy. Also, if you want to create a shaker card, I contemplated making a shaker card of this one, but then I just thought it's soft, it's elegant. I'm going to keep it like this, but I did want it to have a bit of dimension. So I added everything on the frame, and then I took some Darice foam strips, which are really handy for the size of the frame. And I just cover the back of this frame and the images completely. And once I remove the backings, I use my T-square ruler again to get that frame in place once more. And it wasn't that handy, or I wasn't that handy, but well, just take your time, go slow, and try to enjoy the process in the meantime. Once that was done, I could add this one on top of a slimline card base. I also, once I added it, I laid it underneath some books to flatten it out, because you know, if you're watercoloring, chances are huge that it's a bit bulky. So I did that, and once I was happy that it was flattened out, I decided to add some embellishments. Today I'm adding the Droplets pull hearts from Little Things from Lucy's Cards. It's sort of the same blue, and at the same time it's also really soft, so it's not in your face on top of it. So I thought that it worked with the really soft and subtle coloring and the watercoloring that I did. So it's there, you know, but it's subtle. And sometimes we just need that subtle embellishment to finish our card. I'm adding it using some NUVO Deluxe adhesive. And once that is done, I am going to stop right there and leave the card as it is. I hope that you like the card as much as I do, and of course that you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can always give this one a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed yet, definitely do so, because there is a lot of inspiration coming your way on this YouTube channel by a lot of crafty people that you don't want to miss out of. I hope that you have an amazing day. I wish you all the best and see you back soon. Bye!